My name is Canupa, Gluha, and I'm with the Strongheart Warrior Society of South Dakota. I'm currently, establishing an understanding where we can bring forth, what is really happening in Native country. Okay.
I'm with Quasho, Strongheart Warrior Society, and I will be aiding my brother in this understanding.
Well, what I would contest to you right now is just recently there was the establishment of a strong resolution that was being passed at the hands of the tribal government. A few days ago, Brian Brewer, the newly elected tribal president of the Oglala tribe, went out to Washington, D.C. to, beg for more money in the name of the treaty obligations. And so when he got back, a lot of these people, meaning, the so-called, Native people that, are taking a bite out of, something that really brings, impurity to the wrong, pronunciation of what we're talking about, pertaining to the vast devastation of all these resolutions that were forged at the hands of the tribal government. And one of them is forging that support for this Trans-Canada pipeline that's better known as the XL pipeline coming through Native country. But, through international law and all the understandings pertaining to that, my people don't have a belief system in freedom. Therefore, they lack the full-fledged independence that will give them their ability to launch sovereignty in its full capacity. Today, my people have become quasi-sovereign. So therefore, everything that is undermined about human rights and the devastation of what the corporations can do to neutralize, the people's right to their own independence. The prime example is when you have people putting, masquerades on and just fighting a pipeline. That takes away from the big issue, which is your freedom, independence, based upon the real belief of what you had as a free people, because that's the way the matriarchal system was implied to us through a real sovereign mechanism by the three ancient grandmothers. And so today we lost that concept because of Euro-America's Eurocentric man's mentality. So therefore, this type of confusion is really prevalent that the American, system continues to use its own transition of, impurity to destroy what really remaining freedoms that we have based upon our independence. And we have proven that to the world nations. In 2007, on myself and the late Russell Means unilaterally withdrew from this country because this country was not protecting our rights. And we, as citizens of our own country, have a right to denounce our citizenship under international law and under constitutional law. The other comment that I'd like to make, when other issues become, very diverse into what we're believing in, and that's what everybody wants. They want their freedom of independence, but you have to believe in it, and that's where the full-fledged sovereignty can work. But when today's society becomes only quasi-sovereign, or even they're fighting for civil rights, that's begging to the system. They're saying, please, Mr. White Man, can we please be just like you, and we'll commit to, having civil rights. We'll do everything that you ask us to do, and we won't contest it. I mean, that's the way social democracy is implemented in this country. And so, the Eurocentric man uses that because he has no moral connection with the life that he has. In other words, if you have that man destroying life, trees, the rocks, the earth, everything underneath it, on top of it, it doesn't matter. The man has no feelings. So therefore, this type of understanding, in actual reality, this man should be tried for treason and genocide because of his ethnic cleansing. But nobody is getting that first, understanding, to be at the forethought to hold this man accountable for all his diverse behavior. And therefore, in the eyes of all the other people that are fighting for these XL pipelines and all these other Mickey Mouse stuff, that becomes a theory. And theories are not believed. Because anybody can post a sign, because that's what you pick it for. That's what theory does. If you don't understand that word, look it up. And I'm giving everybody that type of understanding. And I'd like to hear from my other warrior member of the Strongheart Warrior Society. Okay.
Well, yeah, population, they've kind of got into the business of being activists. They fight things that they can monetize, like Excel Pipeline, etc. I'm talking about groups like the American Indian Movement. They've been so detached from being indigenous, from being a traditional Indian person, from being on the front lines of this struggle. They've been so disconnected, they've completely forgot that there is a war being waged upon this earth, this traditional indigenous population. This is a war that's still continued, that's just as violent, just as savage and effective as it was 300 years ago. This is a war that's happening this minute, this very second. And us, of the indigenous traditional population, which is as well as Strongheart, we have and always will refuse to submit, to assimilate to a self-destructive, genocidal society and function that does not belong to us. We will not aid and abet monetarily or occupationally to the genocide at hand against our own people, our own continent, our own Mother Earth, never an indigenous population who's facing the same type of genocide. And I guess our point at Strongheart is, the point that we're trying to make is these activist groups and the non-traditional native population, if you're not ready or willing to step up and make the real sacrifices needed to first acknowledge and then attack the root of the problem that creates and will always create the XL pipelines, the perpetual wars, the systematic genocide, the industrial prison complex, that 51% of its prison population is made up of our people, the exploitation, the rampant violence, racism, sexism, starvation, disease, and poverty, environmental destruction, all for power and profit. If you're not willing to attack the root that causes these symptoms, you're chasing your tail, and you really don't want this sacred circle to be mended. You have to attack the root of the problem. These symptoms will continue to always remain. Even Rush the Wings like to tell our people is, and still our people still remain dormant. So Strongheart is now telling our people this, we're carrying this message, and we're spelling it out for them, until the indigenous population is free from civilized man's enslavement and a balanced, unnatural, self-destructive way of life, until we are free and able to return back to a traditional, ceremonial way of life, until we are able to return to the interdependent, symbiotic aspect of nature all of our tribes once represented, from the people of the Long Buffalo people, the coastal people, the Fishnet tribe, and the Corn people, the people of the Cave Dwelling, until we can return to our natural symbiotic relationship with and in this earth as traditional indigenous people, as Lakota, as Chimeja, as Ane, as Azteca. Until we can do that, until we are free to do that, the suit cannot be mended. If you are not fighting for that freedom from this system, freedom from this great sickness in all its forms, from the United States of America to its trap governments, to your personal colonial indoctrinations and spiritual laziness, fighting to get our people back where we belong, back where we've always belonged, then you're part of the problem.
One of the things what my little brother has introduced today is something that is very true, because in today's, understanding, if you understand what legislators do as a distinguished, behavior in the different, degrees of, humanity, they limit that type of possibility to give you what is needed. And therefore, when they allow you to beg, that's not freedom, okay? That's a common law of using civil, deformity to give you the ability to continue to allow yourself to use more people's money to get to a place that doesn't want you. You see, if you have full independence, full sovereignty, and you believe that, that's where freedom lives. And the majority of our people have that, and they still have it. But it's only minute because as a slow, mechanism of what my little brother and I been sharing, in this whole concept of what we're trying to wake people up. The late Russell Means went all over the world to try to give attention to what was dying in a country that had its own freedom. And he was talking about the indigenous population. And therefore, after the passing of the late Russell Means, nobody took that era and that type of situation at the forefront to move forward and break the window of freedom. Let alone having everybody masquerade with different issues that don't and that are irrelevant to the system's behavior. The federal government and the world nations are trying to give people that type of assertion where if you invoke on independence, you become free. And they will leave you alone to give you that opportunity to preserve and share your customs and teach the ones that are yet to come. And we're talking about the ones that ain't even born yet. If you pave that type of, pavement with freedom to the direction where we're going in the 22nd century, if you're going to continue to fight for stuff like the pipeline and many other minute issues, then the whole concept of how the ethnic cleansing is going to continue, to embed itself and destroy the population of people. Because not only is the red nations under attack, the African people are attacked by it, the Caucasian people are attacked by it, also known as the white man, and many other nations, even like our brothers from down south, which are Mashiga and our Asian brothers and sisters. It's the same thing, because Eurocentric man does not have any type of remorseful freedom that he once had when he allowed that type of behavior to become implanted in his soul. So genocidal destruction is what he breeds. The commonality to that matter is that this man is born with a heinous bipolar disorder, and he's using that concept to impose that upon many other nations that are struggling to regain their independence.
I want my people here and the people listening to really reflect and look around them and completely acknowledge the fact that none of the things that they have forcefully implemented and imposed on our people for the past 500 years is healthy or beneficial to us, and not beneficial to any other natural aspect of this earth or the natural living, breathing universe in its totality. For society, for self-destructive behavior and civilized way of thinking, and their life and laws that do not belong to us. They never have. We have our own ways and our own laws. They are as old and ancient as the ground you stand on. These laws were not made by man, but were given to us by the four-legged from Creator, and all the natural creation exist only to maintain the sacred balance that was responsible for the health, the wealth, and the well-being of the entire natural living, breathing earth as a whole, and only as a whole, as one great organism made of many aspects. The United States and civilized man are in breach of natural law. They are in flagrant violation of the only laws that exist in reality. The laws Creator gave all of creation to follow and maintain the sacred balance, and that's nature's law.
What I'd like to add in closing is that, what my little brother has said is true, because this type of, system that we're living under prevents you from exercising your language. And I'll say this in closing. Metaki Lechala, Misokalana, Shetoki Tokataka, Williamson Suka Elgratapi. Wetaha Mila Huska Kawik Chatilina Abelet on a Nahu Hunter, Okia Wula Kotakilen Husky Okius Pati Chantilna. Kokataka Dako Hello Ichisko Tikihe. We choice Akihe Uki. Daku Ashtet Kokataka Elgna Kitchen. The Chantet is Okola Kichi Kile Echela was Akisuka, Kokataka Hori and Naitana, Hechus Ereate Jixika on the Hokela. Wana Islam we Kostaraka, Kawo, Kena Chipi, Elsa Wana Kokata Pionkia. I'm bet to see in Hong Kong. Better Hong Kong Hunter. What's like a little dance he won't like everything. But I get the kick Singapore. All I call that little test. As to her, the Ochokia Bina, the Okola Kichi Gluha Hunter, Hena Isaki Oichak and Oichikoka. Imagine Oichaka Obidakio. And now I talk to Hena Yachipi, Kokatakia, Jopaki, Okip of the Hena, Okil on the old color,